No other poet in the Scottish borders is more shrouded in mystery or quoted as a prophet than Sir Thomas of Ercildoune, also known as Thomas Learmont, but better known as Thomas the Rhymer. His life is wrapped up in romantic and legendary folklore. Little is known about the man himself, but his prophecies and poetry have survived as an enduring legacy. A laird, Thomas Learmont, or Learmouth, was born at Ercildoune, now Earlston, in Berwickshire, around 1220, and he first springs to fame around 1286, when it's said that on a visit to Dunbar Castle, Patrick IV, the 8th Earl of Dunbar and Earl of March, jokingly inquired if anything remarkable was to happen in the next few days. To his surprise, Thomas told him, "Alas, for tomorrow, a day of misery and calamity. Before the 12th hour shall be heard a blast so vehement that it shall exceed all those which have been yet heard in Scotland, a blast which shall strike the nation with amazement, shall confound those who hear it, shall humble the lofty, and what is unbending, shall level the ground." The following day, as the Earl, who noticed no change in the weather, was just preparing to seat himself at his table, having decided at the 9th hour that Thomas was telling tales, when a messenger arrived with news. Alexander III had fallen from his horse over the rocks between Kinghorn and Burnt Island in Fife, and was killed. From this remarkable prophecy, the rhymer became known as True Thomas. From here on in, romantic tales of his time with the fairies evolved. The Queen of Fairyland had heard of his fame, and one day she decided to visit him. An interview took place at Huntly Bank, a slope on the Eildon Hill, about halfway between Melrose and where Abbotsford now stands. Following their conversation, Thomas ventured into Fairyland with her, where he ended up staying for 7 years. Although he wrote many poems in his lifetime, he never wrote about his experiences there, as the Queen, he said, had sworn him to secrecy. She also had bound him to return to Fairyland whenever she wished him to do so. After 7 years, Thomas returned to the Eildon Hill, took up a position, and would utter his sayings which are said to have come true. One of the most well-known ones was, "Betide, betide, whate'er betide, Haig shall be Haig of Bermerside." Up until the later 19th century, Thomas the Rhymer was one of the most quoted border poets. The old poem, St Tristram, is generally accredited to him, and there are very few places in that locale that don't have a prophecy associated with it. But his sayings weren't only local. Not only did he prophesy the death of Alexander III, he also foretold major Scottish battles, those of Bannockburn, Flodden and Pinkie. The Earl of Dunbar visited Thomas one day, telling him he was annoyed that he was predicting so many national disasters, and threatened to give him a drubbing unless he told him some good news. Terrified, the rhymer told him, "The first of blessings I'll shall thee show is by a burn that's called of bread, where Saxon men shall tine a bow, and find their arrows lack the head. Beside that breg, out o'er that burn, where water bickereth bright and sheen, shall many a falling courser spurn, and knights shall die in battle keen." This was a clear reference to the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, a burn that's called bread, the bannock. There is another version of this prophecy that just reads, "The burn o' breed shall Rinfu read, red with the blood of those on the field at Bannockburn. Encouraged to hear such good news, the Earl demanded he tell him who should rule over the country. The rhymer told him, a French queen shall bear a son, shall rule all Britain to the sea. He of the Bruce's blood shall come, as near as to the 9th degree. He is, of course, speaking of Mary Queen of Scots and her son James VI. Thomas's life is supposed to have ended at Ercildoune or Earlston. The story goes that a great feast had been prepared, and once it was finished, the poet entertained the gathering with his stories. After the guests had retired, Lord Douglas couldn't sleep and was lying awake when he thought he heard footsteps. Starting up, he called his page, and together they called out to the intruder. No answer was given, but the noise of the footsteps continued. Rushing out of Ercildoune Tower, they saw an astonishing vision. A beautiful hart and hind of snowy white, passing along the banks of the river. The Queen of the Fairies had come to take Thomas away. The rhymer had foretold the Earl that this would happen, when he said, first he woke's pale, then he woke's red. Never a word he spake but three. My sand is run, my thread is spun, the sign regardeth me. Having hung his harp around his neck, and saying goodbye to his friends, he told them of one final prophecy. To the Learmonts name no foot of earth shall here again belong, and on this hospitable earth shall the hare bear her young. Crossing the river Leader, he was lost from sight and never seen again in around 1296. Some said to hill and some to glen, their wondrous course had been, but never in the haunts of living men again was Thomas seen. Other prophecies have since been attributed to True Thomas, with Sir Walter Scott publishing some of them in his minstrelsy of the Scottish border in 1803. At Eildon Tree, if yon shall be, a brig or tweed yon there may see, is attributed to the viewpoint on the Eildon Hill at Melrose, where 3 bridges over the river were later constructed and could be seen from it. The tree no longer exists, but there is a stone placed to mark where it had been, and it's believed it was from this very spot the Fairy Queen had led Thomas into fairyland, in the heart of the hollowed-out hill. Another cites, York was, London is, and Edinburgh will be, the biggest and the bonniest o' the 3. Edinburgh expanded from its old town to its new town, and has swallowed up many of the surrounding villages over the centuries. Another was, at Threeburn Grange, in an after day, there shall be a lang and bloody fray, where a 3-thumbed weight by the reins shall hold, 3 kings' horse, baith stout and bald, and the 3 burns 3 days will rin, with the blood o' the slain that fa' therein. It's thought this was a place in Berwickshire called Grange, where 3 small burns meet, and many years later, during the French Revolution, a Douglas was born with what supposedly looked like an extra thumb on one of his hands. Those in the locality, who were superstitious, believed the prophecy had come true, to some extent anyway. He is also credited with a curse at Fyvie Castle in Aberdeenshire. The castle had waited 7 years and a day for the rhymer to visit, and when he did, he was accompanied by a violent storm of wind and rain that stripped the trees of their leaves and shut the castle gates with a loud crash. However, it was observed near to the spot where Thomas stood, there wasn't enough wind to shake a pile of grass or move a hair of his beard. While there, he recited the 5 curse, so the legend goes. Known as the Weeping Atone's curse, he predicted, 5 thou'll never thrive, as lang as there's in thee stains 3. There's yin until the highest tower, there's yin until the lady's bower, there's yin aneath the water's edge, and there 3 stains ye's never get. 2 of the stones were discovered, one of which is kept in the castle today, but the 3rd has never been found, and the eldest son hasn't outlived his father since 1885. These are just a few of his many prophecies. Thomas the Rhymer continued to be venerated for centuries after his death, and today there is a memorial to him at his beloved Eildon Hill, near Melrose. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.